Anji, first of all, welcome to our podcast with ID. And thank you for being a part of the beta program and for testing our app. It's quite generous of users to test out an app which is still in the beta stage, which is not yet proven. So thank you for that. Uh, Please tell our viewers something about yourself,
Sure.
your investment journey.
Yeah. First of all, thank you so much for having me. So I have been exposed to the stock markets from a very young age. My father was a sub broker. So back in early 2000s, like he had this terminal, he had this shop, a lot of people used to come. I remember spending a lot of my summers, and in fact, my first year summer was also as basically the person was operating the terminal, right? Because I was good with laptops, good with computers, etc. And I've seen a lot of people make a lot of mistakes, right? And I've seen my father also make a lot of mistakes in the stock market. So I was very clear whenever I have access to, basically, say, suppose a laptop or a good internet connection, I'll read a lot about what not to do, right? And basically, how do you build wealth, right? How do you kind of grow? So from there on, I was doing a lot of research. I used to read a lot of research reports when in college. I used to kind of follow a lot of so-called experts to see how are they recommending stocks, what not to do. And I had this list of stocks which I wanted to invest, right? And so I got my first job, which was in a US-based bank back in 2011, and then started to make some money. So I somehow, because I was a lot more kind of risky in terms of my appetite. Yeah.
Just seeking.
Racing. So I straight away went to options, which was not a very good strategy. But again, the first 2-3 months went very well. I made like 5x, 10x of my investment, and then all of it that went down to zero as well, right? So did that for the first 1 year or so, realized it's actually impacting my work a lot. And this is not something which I would want to continue, because I realized at this point of time, building a career would be way more important than spending time trading, right? So then started to kind of stay a bit away from that, because I kind of started my own startup, which was in the diagnostics field, and realized you can't do two things at once. So got completely away from the markets, focused entirely on building my diagnostic home collection startup back then. Ran that for 4 years in a bootstrap manner. We were actually hired by Sigtuple, which is a medical device company. I currently work in Sigtuple. I basically head the business and strategy for the organization, and was recently elevated as a co-founder as well. So over the course of last 2-3 years, when I have found some time again, I wanted to kind of reconnect with my big passion, which was kind of investing in the markets, etc. So again, I've focused more on the equity side. Made a lot of money, which I had lost in the trading market in the initial about 10-12 years ago. But yes, when I came across your platform, was really excited, because as busy professionals, you don't really have the bandwidth to look at stocks on a regular basis. I still, because I had that background, I still used to spend some time, but you can't really track more than 10, 15, 20 stocks at best, right? And then it becomes difficult as to how do you decide when to sell, how do you do partial profit booking. You need to be a lot more invested, not just in terms of keeping track of what's happening in terms of different companies, but also what's happening globally, what's happening in this sector, etc. And I just felt that you don't have the bandwidth to do all of that. And when I heard about your kind of algo driven model, right, which was focused more on long term investing, that seemed like an ideal fit for someone like me, right? Because even though can claim myself to be on the top half of people aware about the financial markets, but still I felt that it's always better to have basically someone take care of those things, who is an expert, who's looking at back tested data, who is looking at basically all the behavioral patterns which your code also looks at, right? So and again, you have data to prove that you have been able to generate a significant more alpha. All what we do in terms of investing, right, be it an FD, be it kind of bond, or be it equity investment, all of that at the core of it, it is basically trying to generate alpha. And if the point, even if you do, say, suppose FD, but at the end you're trying to see if you can beat the inflation, right? So that your money basically grows. And here, when you had data for the last 3, 4 to prove that you have been able to drive significant more alpha than the markets, it seemed like a no-brainer to me. Right? And I hope, and I've also seen that in the journey the last 1 year or so, that I have been able to make at least 5 to 7% alpha, over what would it have happened if I had left those stocks untouched.
So Yeah, your experience with ID. So when you started off, you had done your diligence, understanding what the algo does, how it works, and at that point of time, there must have been some objectives, or you say some sort of a benchmark for you make this regular, because the beta stage, testing it out, testing the waters. Tell us a bit about what has been your experience with ID so far. Has it been able to meet any of your investment objectives?
So the core idea was, you see, I knew this is going to be safe because it is on my demat account, right? So there was no question of safety, or no question of trusting someone with your money, because all the transactions are going to happen in my account. I am going to be the one who will uh, get the transactions through, right? So, but where I was getting help from your algorithm was the fact that you will tell me what quantity and at what price to place the buy or the sell order, right? So, and hence I knew it was safe. There was nothing to worry about. Where I got convinced that this is something that we should definitely try out was the fact that when I saw alpha, right? Obviously, it makes theoretical sense when you kind of think about it, right? But that is just theory. When you see the actual returns being demonstrated, for someone over a course of 3 to 4 year period, where you have seen some sort of cycles also, right? Be it bull, or be it some small bear market cycles as well. And you have seen that the algorithm is able to generate an alpha across those cycles. That's when I just felt, point is, in a theory, this makes sense. You see it working in reality as well. And then there is no question about risk or any safety, because it's all being done through your own account, right? So this was a no-brainer.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And yeah, just to add to that point, the idea behind this beta program is to get more people check whether it works for them, and see their
Mhm.
alphas and everything. So yeah. Pranatji, so we've discussed a bit about ID and your experience with it. Any one feature or thing about ID? It could be a feature, it could be the philosophy that stands out to you.
So again, I think the way it's being done, right? The See, while and again, this is my theory as well. Even if you are a risk-seeking investor, at the end, you want to save your save your wealth first, right? Growing the wealth obviously comes second, right? All of the people who are investing in the market are doing so because they want to generate a significant more alpha than what your standard fixed deposits, or your recurring deposits can give you. But at the end, they don't want to lose out money. And I feel from my experience, right, the fact that these in a sense, the algorithm keeps on selling stocks, even if basically the stock is on a tear, right? Or what you feel it's on a tear. And if I were to do it on my own, I would probably just hold off, right? Just see if let me play the cycle. This algorithm is designed to kind of take exits regularly, which basically kind of protects your capital, right? So you are able to generate more alpha. At the same time, you have that peace of mind where your capital is being protected, right? And I think that is where you basically kind of see this philosophy, right? A lot of people, when I used to just follow just the markets, right, I'd heard, just don't sell your stocks, just hold on to them, right? 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, just hold on to your stocks. While that may be a good kind of thing for a certain pocket of investors, then I think it's called coffee can investing, something like that, right? But what I've seen is, in case things go south, right? You basically end up holding bags, and you feel a lot of distress that I could have sold it at significantly higher valuation. Here, the
Mhm.
fact that this keeps taking money off the table at regular intervals, right? This philosophy to me is basically significantly more risk averse, and yet this is able to drive more alpha, right? So, what more would you want? A risk averse person who's able to drive more alpha is an ideal situation, in my opinion.
Absolutely. In fact, one of our users did mention what it does is this is an algorithm, or this is a system which converts, one of the biggest uh, risk in the market, the beta, or the risk, or the volatility of a stock, converts that into an asset, or a strength. Strategy. You've been using the product for a while now, and when you started off, obviously things were manual, and they have come a long way in terms of getting some of the pieces automated. We
Mm.
now have a product more or less stable. Anything which one thing which you find missing or anything which would help you as an investor in your journey, and for people, if there's anything you'd like to, it also gives us perspective how people look at
Yeah.
the product.
Just one, I think it is more of a regulatory bottleneck than a product bottleneck, to be honest. But if I think we could get to a point where I don't have to even just click that one button on a daily basis, right? So currently, as you said, right? So in the beginning, it was all manual. Now it has moved to a point where you just click a button, and then your orders go through Zerodha. But see, the core of it, right? If I am on a daily basis, if I am opening my portfolio, if I am looking at it, there's a higher chance of me as an individual investor to kind of try and exit also at times, right? Or kind of see what's happening. So the fact is, I believe wealth can compound if you can just leave it and forget it. Yeah, and because you can do that in this algo, because it will keep taking out and some profits as well, and it will keep reinvesting, right? So you don't have to monitor this on a regular basis. Uh, but I'm sure, and I think you've spoken about it in the past as well. This seems more like more like a bit of a regulatory
It's a
thing that you.
regulatory requirement. Yeah.
One suggestion, and I don't know if a lot of you viewers who are kind of seeing this will also kind of like to see this, but one recommendation which I'd like to float again is if we could have a new index fund sort of thing floated from your end, right, or through a fund house where you collaborate, and we can just put in money, and like a mutual fund, it works on the back end, but it uses your algorithm on top of the standard basically indexes. Suppose the Nifty 50 index fund, right, where you would have those 50 stocks selected by default, but you just place your model on top, right? So because see again, this has been proven, I think, globally, that index funds typically have outperformed active mutual funds also from a large in a large cadence, and we have data to prove that your model is going to drive more alpha. So if you add your model on top of a passive index fund, right, I believe that could grow massive, right, from an Indian population point of view as well, because you have taken away the biggest cost of people who are trying to kind of get into the mutual fund is about the 2%, 1.5% fees on an annual basis. Right? People feel कि अरे काम क्या कर रहा हूँ उसको मैं क्यों दे रहा हूँ इतना fees. Right? Here you could come down to say suppose a fees which is percentage of your alpha, right? Which kind of proves to your customers as well that I make money only when the model generates more alpha for you, right? And hence this if this could be paired with a fund house or say suppose an index fund, I think this is a strong recipe for success in my opinion.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, that is one area. A couple of just algorithmic challenges there, but definitely that's one area we're looking at. We've discussed this a couple of times. Finally, Pranatji, so you've been in the stock market, the equity markets for almost a decade, in fact, above a decade now. And you've seen the equity markets from the relatively stable in that sense. Obviously, have been there, but relatively to today's volatility and the algo systems and everything. Yeah. If you had to advise yourself, 10 years ago, or somebody today who is on the sidelines planning to get into the stock market, what would be your words of wisdom, so to speak, to them, or any advice? Yeah.
My mother used to say this, right? Is पैसे को पैसा बनाना चाहिए. अगर तुम जिंदगी भर मेहनत कर रहे हो पैसे कमाने के लिए, तो you can only work 8 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours, 15 hours a day, right? But if your money is working for you to make money, then you could probably can relax a bit more earlier than what you would have if you would not, right? So again, so the earlier you start, the better. The core of the core of the basic argument is that if you don't get into the investment bandwagon, uh, you have to do something with your money, right? Either you focus on your own skill sets, through which your salary compounds by 15-20% year on year, right? Or, and again, that's obviously a great place to be in, right? If you can do that on a year on year basis. But for most of us, I think while we would want to do that, here, whatever money we have made, if that also can compound, on a regular basis. So that is the ideal situation to be in, right? Where you focus on your skill sets which lead to your personal or your professional compounding, and whatever money you have made, right, put it into an algo like this, put it into an index fund like this, which without much supervision can continue to compound wealth for you as well.
Absolutely. So, I think the entire idea is at least generating couple of other streams of income. So one is obviously you're invested in yourself in terms of upgrading your skills. But then, any compounding there or growth there sort of leads to a lifestyle inflation in that sense, right? So to continue to have that flexibility, because at the end of the day, the productive years are limited for anybody, right?
Yeah.
So what after that? So having that corpus is very important. So, and one of the investment avenues definitely the stock market. There are a lot of others, but yeah,
Yes.
I think that's an advice. Thank you so much, Pranatji. Any parting thoughts?
This has been amazing. So I started small, and I obviously want to double down, and I will, because this to me is a no-brainer, right? But what you are doing, so again, point is, we know that the Indian growth story is here for the next couple of decades. Uh, we want to participate. All of us want to participate in that in our way. The stock market investing gives you a chance to get access, get ownership in companies which are also working as hard as you are working, but in different domains, right? So this sort of de-risks you, if I,
Diversification.
right?
Diversification. Yes.
So this is a great diversification as well if you can put the stock markets. But then, as I said again, for working professionals like myself, it is difficult to dedicate time, right? Since to have dedicated fund managers, etc. And again, so the amount of corpus that we have is not significant for us to attract the best of the fund managers as well. So this is where I think a strong AI-powered algo such as yours comes into place, right? Where you get the expertise of a best fund manager to work with even small amount of corpus like ours, and helps us kind of focus more on the professional side, on our own professional journeys, and ensure that we can get benefited by the wealth compounding which happens through the own engine.